And I mean, there have been, in this particular genre of like trying to fuse a romance story, a kind of like girl meets a prince, but, you know, in this case, because it's set in the US, there aren't any. It's, you know, a businessman who's very, very wealthy, so it's like the equivalent kind of, that, you know, you could come up with. They have taken this, you know, theme of kind of taking that and doing it with a more like BDSM feel. They have had other authors do it and do it better. Not necessarily fantastic or completely accurate, but better. Right. And it seems like the more of those kinds of things that are getting pumped out, they're getting a little bit more realistic because the people in the BDSM community are sick of seeing nonsense. And so they're like, well, we're just going to have to freaking write them ourselves. Yeah. Because nobody else is doing the research or talking to us to do it. So then some of them are doing their own kind of things and it's being released. But you can see a clear difference between them. And so I remember the author was asked, you know, what do you feel about, you know, the backlash from the community and stuff, and what do you feel about, like, what's happened with your book and whatever? And her theory was, well, I couldn't go completely hardcore with it because that wouldn't appeal to a mass audience. This was like tiptoeing in bringing this community into the light and into mainstream. And you can't go all the way right away because just the most people will not understand. And it's like,
yeah, that's like saying that, we were bringing people with beloved relationships with their beloved mother into the spotlight gently with Psycho. You know, like, we're doing it in the worst possible way, but we're exposing you to a greater audience. You're welcome.
Yeah, and I mean, like, it was funny because when the movie first came out, I am part of a fetish website called Fet Life, and it's kind of like the Facebook version of the Kinkster community. So, I mean, there are a lot of, like, assholes there or whatever, but this one guy is, like, a young guy, and he's just getting into it, and he's learning things as he's going along, so he's not, like, you know, seasoned. He doesn't know everything. He's learning, he's going along. So he went to see the movie, and he said, you know, the first couple of minutes, you know, whatever, the kind, you know, where they're interacting, he's like, I can understand, like, there's mind play going on. I was with it, and I was almost excited, because I was like, oh, you know, it's not perfect, but there are some things that I can relate to here. And he said, and then they got to the actual BDSM things that aren't, like, emotional. It's not the connection you have with someone. It's not that aspect. And he goes, I walked out of the theater. I literally got up, said, screw the money I wasted on this, and I walked out. And he's like, and I'm a newbie. And I knew better looking at it. And he's like, they had the right tools, but they weren't, you know, he wasn't explaining what they were to her. He wasn't. Yeah. You know, just the way that they were interacting wasn't properly done as to, you know, you can hurt somebody emotionally and physically and stuff. And so, you know, even, people in the community were just like, oh, I tried. I mean, I tried to be fair. I tried to be understanding and I couldn't do it. I just couldn't do it.
And you know, and that's really, like, I understand when people, well, first I want to make this before I forget. Usually if you walk out of a movie and it's less than half the way through, you can get your money back. Most cinemas will give you your money back.
Well, see, that poor guy should have, I feel bad for him. Yeah, he just, like, was like, screw it, and just, like, left.
Yeah, I would, but I, you know, I learned this when I walked out of that X-Men movie, which is the first film that I've ever actually walked out and left. But yeah, I found out that generally if you have not watched half of the film, they will give you your money back, no questions asked. But yeah, I mean, like, this is the really bad part. Like, I've always said it's okay if someone has an unhealthy kink or fetish that they want to express in fiction and present it as, you know, this is fiction, this is just a fantasy. You know, like we were talking about non-con fantasies. I forget if we were actually broadcasting while we were doing it, but we've talked about this. We've talked about this on Bad Fan Fiction Theatre before. People having not really healthy things that turn them on, but they still like the fantasy of them.
Mm-hmm.
And that there's nothing wrong with that. But this woman seems to be like, she's buying her own hype, which is always a bad thing. Like, I always say when you're buying your own hype, that is always a bad thing. That's never good. And this is a case of that. She's clearly buying her own hype about this when she could have just said, well, I was just writing a fantasy, because she's just using window dressing. She knows just enough, as they say, to be dangerous. She's not really reeling it up, but then realistic BDSM is not, like, unless you're involved in it, it's not something that I think people would enjoy necessarily reading a book about unless it's presented just so. Like, or unless they're really interested in, like, the minutiae and like all the back and forth between people. Because when you're not involved in it and you're reading about two other people basically negotiating sex, it can get kind of boring really fast unless you're really good at presenting it. And so I understand if people want to kind of cut that out and just get to the really kinky stuff, but you cannot present it as like some sort of factual fact book and like, yeah, I'm just doing this for you guys. Cool story, bro.
Well, yeah, I mean, right.
That's not okay.
And I mean, she didn't really even do the negotiations right, because it's really not like a negotiate. I mean, you know, like even people who use contracts, like the contract, that whole part is what a small group of people do, because that's part of the experience for them. But not everybody does that. Most of the time it's a conversation just like the one we're having now, where you say, like, I'm not cool with this, but I am cool with this. What do you think about this? And you're getting to know each other. So it's less like we're negotiating how we're going to have sex, and it's more like, let me get to know you and what you're into. And then after that, it's like, all right, let's start the process of this kind of, you know, mental foreplay back and forth. Let's make a connection, whatever.
That was basically my point. Like, it was, I'm probably not presenting it very well. I had an odd divided sleeping thing today, so my mind's still not quite, but what I meant was, like, she was using the trappings and basically, and didn't really understand how a lot of it really worked. So it ended up being very boring in the way that she presented it.
Yeah.
Whereas if someone had taken it and presented it in like a way to evolve the characters as they discussed it in a natural way, then it's not going to be something that's like boring. But there's a lot of little bother that's associated, and like there's stuff on the side that may not be the most exciting thing to read, and you know, maybe if you want to get to the heart of it, get to the real bumping and grinding, but like people need to, like this author need to stop presenting their stuff as, oh yeah, this is totally real to life, this is totally accurate shit.
Right.
But, I mean, people should know that from one looking at the story, because it's ludicrous. It's patently ludicrous right from the start. But at the same time, she's selling it when she's buying her own hype.
The thing that is the kind of the most neglectful on her part, from my feeling, from reading it and being around people that have been in the lifestyle since I was about 13, I started talking to different people that are in the lifestyle and have been since before I was born, probably. And, you know, the thing that they have always told me that she neglected to do is that you have serious long conversations. Like, I know she might not want to actually go into what that conversation is, but she can make mention that it happened. There's always a conversation about safety. There's always a conversation about, you know, you are in control, what the safe words mean. Because, he presents her with a system, red, yellow, you know, green, red, and yellow. Fine. Some people do use that system. Some people use, you know, you just pick a safe word and that's your safe word and then that's it.
Yeah, like Jigglypuff.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Like Jigglypuff. Yeah, I do too. And somebody was like, why are you picking that? You know, in the chat, when, Ruffles was in here. But, But so, these things are like really important things. Like it's fundamental. Like people will not go to the fun stuff unless the other person fully 100% understands everything that's going to happen. And in this, it's like, well, Anna, you're just going to need to blindly trust me. And she's like, I want you to do your worst. And he hesitates for like 2 seconds. And it's like, anybody really in that situation would go, especially who's supposed to have had the experience that he supposedly had. He's supposedly been doing this since he was a teenager. So now he's close to 30. So that's quite a while. He's had over a decade to kind of know things and how things go. So he should be like, hey, Anna, this is what this really means. So in the event that you need to do this, and it's okay, I'm not going to like hate your guts if you do it. It's, it's not about that. And he doesn't. And so there's this, there are all these girls saying, well, if I'm not what this guy wants and I'm not okay with it, I shouldn't do it. I should just, let him do whatever and then decide after. And that's a really dangerous thing.
It really is. It undermines everything that the safe word is about. Mm-hmm. That's the whole thing that it's about. You shouldn't be afraid to use your safe word because in that power dynamic, the submissive is supposed to have the power. That's the thing that a lot of people don't really understand. Like, this is a fantasy. This is something that you participate in because you enjoy that fantasy. You enjoy that idea of that fantasy, but you are giving someone the power until you take it away. And if you're not having a good time, that's the time when you need to use the safe word. Like, if you're not comfortable, you should be using a safe word, and they should stop immediately. That's exactly what you should do. I
mean, especially if you're new partners. I mean, you have to understand, if you're new partners and you're still getting to know each other, you might be carried away in the fantasy, and the person who's on top may be doing something that they think, okay, because we've been doing this, we're escalating, so I'm going to continue to escalate. And the other person goes, oh, wait, you're going too far. That's when they say, Jigglypuff, I need you to, and then the person goes, what? And they're like jarred out of it, and they're like, I'm sorry, I got carried away. And then aftercare, and then everything's fine. You work it out amongst yourselves. But it's this thing that I've seen that's a trend since 50 Shades of Grey in the community, on the site that I was talking about that I'm part of, and in the community in general, is there are these people who are new, who come in and they go to like a workshop or they go to like a club once. And then they think they're an authority because they've read the book and they've gone once. And then they try things, and there are these guys, these young guys, who think that they're a dominant personality in their lives, so that means that they're a dominant personality in their sexuality, which they might be right, they might be wrong. But the thing where it goes askew is when they think, well, I've been with my girlfriend for 6 years, so I know what her limits are, so she doesn't need a safe word. And they try to get away with it without it, and it's like, that's not cool. And then they use the kind of mental mentality with you, because I actually had a boyfriend very briefly who we were just talking, right? It wasn't to the stage where we were actually doing anything. And he was like, you don't need a safe word because of the relationship that we have, the connection we have. I'll know. You'll be able to signal different things. And I'm like, you're out of your tree. You have fallen so hard out of your tree that you have brain damage. No, that's not how it, like, that's not the 3 words that this is all based on. And he was like, the 3 words, and I'm like, oh my God, like, really?
Does he not know? I would have been like, okay, we're not doing anything until you can tell me those 3 words, okay?
I was like, dude, I don't think this is gonna work, and it didn't. Like that week was like the week of the end of that, a couple of years ago. But anyway, so he was like, what are the 3 words? And I was like, all right, I learned these from my mom. Okay, so I'm just letting you know that, like, I've known these since I was like a teenager, like literally just a teenager. Safe, sane, and consensual, which means that all 3 of those ducks have to be in a row for it to work. And part of safe is your safe word. See how that works? That goes together. Like, there are connections. And he was just like, you don't have to talk down to me. I'm domly. And I was like, you are what we call a twoo-dom, which is, you think you know everything, but sadly, my friend, you've been reading 50 Shades of Grey.
You've been drinking the Kool-Aid, dude.
Speaking of 50 Shades of Grey, we should probably get back to that 30 minutes later.
Oh, sorry.
Okay.
This is
talk time.
It's talk time.